scientific literature painted the picture of a medical revolution, while many of the patients themselves were literally living through a nightmare.
Now in medical news, a breakthrough, a report that a doctor has found a way to grow a new windpipe for patients with cancer. It's one more step in the medical promise of stem cells, those basic cells that change to form parts of the body. Dr. Richard Besser is here with the latest news.
It's considered the holy grail in its field, a transplant of the trachea.
The artificial tracheas did not become living organs. In many patients, the plastic implants never integrated with the body at all. Instead, they began to fail. Patients developed chronic infections. The airway could break down or separate from the surrounding tissue. Some suffered persistent bleeding or air leaking into the chest. Could you imagine how brutal that is? How insanely painful it is, and that this thing it's inside of you. It's inside of you. You can't just remove it. This is literally something destroying your throat from the inside. What if I told you that 2 + 2 = 5? Well, of course you would say that's nonsense, right? But what if you saw that this was published in a reputable journal and there were various studies on it conducted by scientists with numerous accolades, awards, certifications, and degrees? Well, you'd still say it's bullshit because you can visualize and experience this yourself. Using your human senses, you can take 2 apples, 2 oranges, put them together in a box and see that the total is 4. Common sense. And so you could just disregard those studies like no problem. Now, what's something simple? Okay, so let's say hypothetically, instead of arguing 2 + 2 = 5, instead these various studies were promoting the idea that indigenous people have the same IQ as Western people.
We couldn't lead us over the islands. You don't shift petrol from right hand. You put the petrol in the higher stage. Don't be rama-ramas messing with your brain.
Well, because when I ask AI about these IQ differences, I seem to get the same answers. Whether it's Gemini, ChatGPT, it doesn't seem to matter. Big names like Psychology Today reflect a broader scientific consensus. Observed differences in average IQ scores between racial groups are primarily driven by environmental and socioeconomic factors rather than innate genetic differences. And experts who have earned the title of doctor, such as Dr. Monica Williams, highlight that biological race is largely a social construct. Genetic differences between socially constructed racial groups are minuscule, and there is no evidence that intelligence varies by skin color or facial features. Well, thank you so much, Google AI. As a turbo normie, I see it was published in a massive journal like Psychology Today. I see the word expert, I see doctor, and so I'm convinced, that must be the truth. Listen here, AI nigga, I got another question for you. Has Dr. Monica Williams had any studies retracted? In August 2024, the journal Psychopharmacology issued a retraction for a paper titled Long-Term Follow-Up Outcomes of MDMA-Assisted Psychotherapy for Treatment of PTSD. blah, 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 blah. The retraction of this multi-author study followed an investigation that revealed data integrity issues and concerns regarding undisclosed protocols or conflicts related to the clinical trial data provided to the research team. It's actually very difficult to get a study retracted, so that says a lot that she even has one, but I digress. Now, not to single out Monica, she's just a random expert that Google's AI cited, and I guess I just got lucky and it happened to fit the narrative of my video, so I decided to throw this in there, you know? I mean, it's kind of fitting, isn't it? You see, if Dr. Monica had no retracted studies, then it wouldn't fit my narrative and I wouldn't have highlighted her and I wouldn't have added that in my video. I would simply just leave it out. But the fact that there was a retraction did fit my narrative, hence I included it in my video. And you see, that's just one kind of sneaky fraud we see work its way into science, selectively removing and adding data to fit a narrative, just like you saw me do for this video. This happens way more than you think, and this is why we are currently facing the replication crisis in science. Tons of groundbreaking studies that get published in reputable journals also can't be replicated. This is most common in psychology, but fraud, bias, negligence, and hype persist throughout all science. But it would be fair to say that the entire field of psychology is quite littered with lots of science fiction. The problem here is that no normal people ever think to question studies. They see it published on a nice website, .org.edu website, maybe gets published in some big journal, and they see a big headline or what Google AI is telling them, and they just take it as 100% truth. They don't question it at all. And this is the overwhelming majority of people. When you get into debates with people, they will frequently try to cite a study and they haven't even looked into the study's validity. Now look, the entire agenda that's being pushed, that genetics hardly matter, and that racial differences don't really exist, and that IQ is mostly environmental, is all a topic for another video, not this one unfortunately. I just use that to sort of hook and engagement bait the normies a little bit, which should be finishing their comments right about now if my estimate is correct. But trust that scientific fraud, bias, negligence, and hype, the four horsemen of science fiction, cut a lot deeper than just pushing an agenda that blue eyes are not superior to brown eyes in terms of attraction. Oh right, yes, our good friend and infamous Coper Quoves frequently likes to cite self-reported studies so he can pander to his audience a bit better and use these studies that just fit his narrative.
The attractiveness research does show no clear cross-cultural preference for any specific eye color, where some cultures favor light eyes while others prefer brown shades. It just matters on the context of what's the most popular eye color in that region. But asking people their preferences isn't enough. We need to look at experiments. Scientists from Charles University took photographs of 80 blue or brown Czech men and women and professionally edited their eye colors. They also externally verified that editing was undetectable. The eye color swap had no impact on rated attractiveness. So no, if you're born with a different eye color, it really won't change how attractive you are to others. It really won't change how attractive you are to others. It really won't change how attractive you are to others.
Because obviously nobody lies in these self-reported studies. They're all 100% honest. You know, nobody's biased towards their own group or to themselves, or virtue signal to themselves or to the study. No, that would never happen. That's impossible. Nah, this study is 100% legit, more legit than evolution itself. Oh, but looking at evolution requires a level of critical thinking, right? Rather than just looking at the fucking study telling you what you want to hear, right? I'd rather just read a study of people telling me what they like, and I'm just gonna take their word for it. Yeah, that's the better way to go about it. All blue eyes trace back to a single shared ancestor who lived in Europe or the Black Sea region between 6,000 and 10,000 years ago. What does this imply? It implies that that single individual and the offspring of that individual had far higher success in reproduction than the average person. With just some basic critical thinking, you can deduce that blue eyes are objectively more attractive because that was the common denominator. Now, I know what the turbo normie copers are about to be typing up in their comments. You know, they're going to try to use this against me. Well, how do you know that's legitimate? You know, you're talking about all these fake studies. How do you know that that's legitimate? How did those scientists come to that conclusion? Right? You know, maybe it's just made up, right? Google AI told me something earlier about racial differences, you know, so it's not out of left field, right? But nope, sorry, these studies can be extensively replicated. My apologies, Mr. Coper. But as I was saying before I went off on that retarded tangent, because I am retarded, 87 IQ, and proud, it gets so much worse than this. It gets so much worse. Let me tell you a short story that I read from a book, Science Fictions by Stuart Ritchie. Great book. I recommend you read it. And that's what this video is about, actually. Imagine you're told that you have no options left. A deadly disease is destroying your airway. Conventional treatments have failed. Then, a world-famous surgeon offers what sounds like a miracle. He tells you that scientists have discovered a way to grow replacement organs using your own stem cells. Instead of waiting for a donor, doctors can now build a new windpipe, coat it with your stem cells, implant it into your body, and let nature do the rest. And over time, your own cells are supposed to transform the artificial scaffold into a living, functioning organ that your immune system won't reject. And this sounded like the future of medicine. The idea itself wasn't completely invented out of thin air. Earlier research using donor tracheas had shown some promise, and regenerative medicine was one of the hottest fields in science. But Paolo Macchiarini claimed he could go much further. He said patients no longer needed donor organs at all. A synthetic plastic tube would work just as well. The evidence for that claim, however, was remarkably thin. Instead of years of careful animal studies and rigorous clinical testing, Macchiarini rapidly began implementing these artificial tracheas into desperately ill patients. Then came the scientific papers, published in prestigious medical journals. They described patients recovering well and suggesting the synthetic tracheas were working just as hoped. To the medical community, it looked like it was a revolutionary breakthrough, right? Hospitals wanted him, you know, the journalists, they were celebrating him, and so he became one of the most famous surgeons. But according to later investigations, the published papers told a very different story from what many of the patients actually experienced. Serious complications were omitted or minimized, and some reports describe patients as doing well even after they had suffered catastrophic failures. Others failed to fully report repeated surgeries, severe infections, or the rapid deterioration that followed the implants. The scientific literature painted the picture of a medical revolution, while many of the patients themselves were literally living through a nightmare. The artificial tracheas did not become living organs. In many patients, the plastic implants never integrated with the body at all. Instead, they began to fail. Patients developed chronic infections. The airway could break down or separate from the surrounding tissue. Some suffered persistent bleeding or air leaking into the chest. Could you imagine how fucking brutal that is? How insanely painful it is, and that this thing it's inside of you. It's inside of you. You can't just remove it. This is literally something destroying your throat from the inside. Many endured dozens of additional surgeries, months in intensive care, and years of repeated hospitalizations as doctors struggled to manage one complication after another. For some, what had been presented as a life-saving innovation became an extended ordeal of pain and suffering before they ultimately died from complications related to the failed implants. Yep, not just died, but many years of brutal suffering because of these artificial tracheas that were implemented in them. The tragedy wasn't simply that an experimental treatment failed. Experimental medicine always carries some risk, yes, but the tragedy was that doctors, researchers, and future patients were making decisions based on scientific papers that allegedly did not tell the whole truth. When the published evidence is distorted, dangerous treatments can continue long after warning signs of what should have stopped them. And so this is why Stuart Ritchie includes the Macchiarini case in science fictions, because scientific fraud isn't just about fabricated numbers or manipulated graphs. It could convince the world that a treatment works when it doesn't. And when that happens, the people who pay the highest price are the patients who literally trusted the science, like understandably so. Because we're just regular people, we're not scientists. We're not supposed to be the ones doing our homework. But unfortunately, those people ended up suffering gruesome deaths. Insanely painful, very, very drawn out deaths. Oh, but it doesn't even end there. Science fiction fraud can impact the masses as well. Especially when it's something that people are inclined to already want to believe, you know, like big narratives going against big corporations. Like people are always ready to jump on those kinds of things. And it's not ideal. You know, you always have to critically analyze things for yourself. So let me share this other story with you because this one is insane. Imagine you're a parent in the late 1900s, right? Your child is due for the MMR vaccine. This is the combined measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine that millions of children around the world receive. Doctors considered it safe. Public health officials considered one of the greatest achievements in modern medicine. Then, a shocking study appears in one of the world's most prestigious medical journals. Similar pattern, right? A respected British doctor, Andrew Wakefield, claims he has found evidence suggesting that the MMR vaccine may be linked to autism and bowel disease in children. The paper only included 12 children, but it didn't matter. The idea was terrifying, and if true, one routine childhood vaccination could be causing lifelong neurological damage. News outlets around the world exploded with the story. Parents became frightened. Vaccination rates began to fall.
Good morning, Maggie. Well, this is much more than just an argument about science. This has been a dispute with real impact on society. Many parents listened when doubts were raised about the safety of the common MMR vaccine against measles, mumps, and rubella.
A 1998 study that linked the vaccine to autism and bowel disease gained enormous credibility from its publication in the British medical journal, The Lancet.
So we're seeing a similar pattern here, right? Like massive big publication, and then the news is reporting this everywhere. And so the average people at home, the parents, they're rightfully and understandably convinced. Like you have to be an insane contrarian to like stop and say like, wait, that might not be true. Like the whole world is telling you something. All the people you look up to on the news, all these authority figures, they're telling you there's something is true. And you have to be the one regular guy in your house, one regular man to say, wait a second, I don't believe this is true. Like it's a lot to expect from the average person. This isn't our job. Anyway, the parents, rightfully so, became very frightened. And so vaccination rates began to fall, understandably so. But behind the scenes, there was a very, very different story. Something that nobody knew, but if they knew, probably would cause some questioning. Wakefield presented his research as an independent scientific investigation. Yet it later emerged that he had been secretly paid hundreds of thousands of pounds by lawyers representing families preparing lawsuits against vaccine manufacturers. Those lawyers weren't funding the research simply to answer a scientific question. No. They were gathering evidence that could support legal claims. There's the incentive. And on top of this, at the same time, Wakefield had another undisclosed interest. He had filed patents connected to his own alternative single measles vaccine and diagnostic tests. If confidence in the combined MMR vaccine collapsed, then there was a potential market for the alternative approach he was helping develop. And of course, none of these conflicts of interest appeared in the paper. As journalists and other researchers dug deeper, even more serious problems emerged. Medical records didn't match what had been reported. Ethical rules surrounding the treatment of children had allegedly been violated. The study itself was tiny and incapable of proving a causal relationship, yet its conclusions were presented in ways that fueled enormous public fear. So over the following years, dozens of much larger studies involving hundreds of thousands and eventually millions of children searched for the same link, and they couldn't find it. What do you know?
This publication, which was wrong, was scientifically implausible, which should never have been published to start with, led people to believe vaccination caused autism.
In its retraction, The Lancet now agrees, saying the claims in the original paper have been proven to be false.
The evidence overwhelmingly showed that the MMR vaccine does not cause autism. Literally just a bunch of fucking coping parents making lawsuits trying to blame the vaccine for their kids having autism. And so they paid this guy to create the studies that are going to prove this so they could use those studies in their lawsuits. And so eventually, The Lancet fully retracted the paper, Wakefield lost his medical license in the UK, and the study became one of the most infamous examples of scientific misconduct in modern medicine. But by then, you know, it's kind of too late. The damage had been done to the masses. Vaccination rates had fallen in several countries. Measles, a disease that had been close to elimination in many places, began making a comeback. Outbreaks infected thousands of poor little children, leading to hospitalizations and in some cases, preventable deaths. Yes, little niggas died. They fucking died because of this nonsense. A paper based on just 12 children had helped undermine public trust in one of the medicine's safest and most effective vaccines. And so this is why Stuart Ritchie includes the Wakefield story in science fictions. You see, fraud in science isn't always about inventing data from scratch. Sometimes it's about hiding conflicts of interest, overstating weak evidence, and allowing personal incentives to shape what is presented as objective science. And when that happens, the consequences could be insanely vast. Many children, unfortunately, died. And ones who didn't die, plenty more had suffered through this when it could have been prevented. But yeah, this is something that the public was quick to run with because we're always quick to want to jump to anything against big corporations, anything against big pharma, anything against, you know, it's just like, it's a really bad symptom of like the average person. You know, we always want to be quick to believe conspiracy theories, and a lot of times they're just not true. They're just not. What if I told you that much of what you have learned through reading studies that are published in reputable journals, on .org, .edu websites, even things that you've learned from textbooks in school, what if I told you that a lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it is completely untrue? This, my friends, is the biggest issue in science right now, and it is called the replication crisis. You see, in order for a study to be considered legitimate and truthful, it needs to be replicated. And it has been discovered that around 40% of studies cannot be replicated. And this is extremely concerning because so many of these studies are literally the backbone of the textbooks that we are giving children in school, textbooks that we are basing curriculums around. And we see many of these studies being published in some of the most reputable journals. And there's good reasons for all this. And it comes down to fraud, bias, negligence, and hype. Those are the four pillars of science fiction.
While a professor at Tilburg University, he quickly made a name for himself and was recognized as a superstar. He published dozens of papers in behavioral science. Some of them were published in the top journals of the field, such as Science. His findings were often surprising and seemed to lift a veil on our unconscious motivations and reveal a deeper, darker truth to our humanity. And to further establish himself as a superstar at Tilburg University, he founded the group TIBER, the Tilburg Institute for Behavioral Economics Research. And after just 4 years of being at the university, he became the Dean of the Social and Behavioral Sciences faculty. But all was not well in paradise. You see, as Stapel was rising through the ranks at Tilburg University, 3 of his PhD students who received datasets directly from Stapel grew suspicious of the data that they were seeing. According to Retraction Watch, which is the blog that tracks how many papers have been retracted by different authors, Stapel currently has 58 of his papers retracted, making him the 7th most retracted academic of all time.
It's actually very, very difficult to get a study removed, retracted, but it does happen, and there is like a leaderboard of scientists who've had the most studies retracted. Whenever you see somebody has a study retracted and you see they made another study, always proceed with caution, because there, of course, it could have been an error. Yes, scientists do make honest mistakes, but you have to understand how difficult it is to get these studies retracted. Usually there is some foul play. Usually there is some intention to fabricate some sort of data. And that's why there's an incentive to get the study retracted.
So who am I? I'm Diederik Stapel. I'm committed scientific fraud.
Through this talk on the train and through other interviews that I've read of his, he tells this story of how he became obsessed with a goal of telling neat stories of how the world worked through data and science. Stapel talks about how he would often become frustrated with real-world data. How when he wanted to tell a neat story to prove his hypothesis, the world would return back a messy dataset that didn't allow him to tell the story that he wanted to tell. Now, this is obviously a twisted logic by an academic, and retrospectively, Stapel has admitted that his way of thinking back then was totally messed up.
I became obsessed with results, by finding answers, by finding what I expected to find. That became my obsession, and it pushed away all the other goals. I got blinded by my goal.
But in addition to this twisted logic, he often cites the pressures of academia being one of the key reasons that drove him to commit such terrible data fraud.
And one of the most interesting things is the incentive usually is the scientist is so convinced of some theory that they have, and they believe that that theory is going to lead to a net positive, not only in the science community, but for mankind as a whole.
1 mile, keep left.
And so they keep doing these studies, and they are not coming to the result that they believe they should be. They are not able to come to the result through these studies that they believe their study is aligned with. And so when they keep failing at this, they decide to take it into their own hands, to manipulate the data, to manipulate it's not even just manipulate the data, like there's plenty of scientists who've literally just completely fabricated numbers, pulled them out of thin air. And some of them are really good at it because some of them know that it can't be too perfect, numbers can't be too perfect. This is like a common thing in science. How studies get fraud checked is like the numbers could seem too perfect because there always needs to be some disorder. The human it is very difficult for the human to replicate the natural disorder of nature. It is very difficult, but some of them do it quite well. But even still, oftentimes they will get caught. But you also have to wonder, like, okay, so 40% of studies cannot be replicated. How many have we not, been been aware of. Like, how many, we've seen so many big fraud cases get busted. So many of these guys have their studies retracted, but like, what about the guys who are better at it?
In 0.6 miles.
We hear about
left.
the criminals who get caught. You know, when people commit murder or they rob a bank, we hear about the ones that get caught typically. Usually the ones who don't get caught, you know, there's a great incentive for society to sort of like slip those situations under the rug because it would provoke fear otherwise. Or just sometimes we just literally just don't know. Like, people just disappear. And that's that. And these are the much better criminals. And so you have to wonder, like, certainly there's got to be even more studies out there that are completely fabricated, that are just executed very well and very realistically.
Keep left.
And we just can't spot them. But nonetheless, these are things that are changing the direction of the human race. These are things that are exhibiting great influence across all humans alive and civilization. And we've seen how drastic the ramifications of this have been. For example, with the measles vaccine.
This publication, which was wrong, was scientifically implausible, which should never have been published to start with, led people to believe vaccination caused autism.
Keep left.
It's
Keep
not.
left.
Shut the fuck up, Waze. It's not always possible to identify where the resources are coming from to fund the studies. But if it is, you always investigate that. Always investigate where the funding is deriving from. Also, what's up, buddy? What are you doing? What's up? You also always want to look at if the studies could be replicated.
Keep left.
And some of the most important things to look at in the studies is not the conclusion of the study, but if all of the details of how the study was conducted is provided. Because some studies leave that out.
0.6
Big
miles.
red flag.
Keep left.
Very big red flag when you see that a lot of details about
In half a mile.
how the
Keep
study
left.
was created are left out. This way, like, nobody could even try to replicate it. But yeah, you know, like, fraud, bias, negligence, hype, it affects so much.
A
And
quarter of a mile.
these
Keep
days,
left.
we see so many people, especially on the internet, where we see tons of these
In
midwits
0.1 miles.
trying to
Keep
argue
left.
cases like fucking Destiny.
Keep left.
You know, he's like the king of this. Destiny is like the king of citing studies that are absolute trash. Like garbage studies. Because
In an interview with Vox, Starple said, "There's something about me, and there's something about the environment. The publication pressure, the need for simple answers instead of allowing for complexity, the focus on egos and individual researchers, first authors and grants to individuals versus groups or universities." So while I don't agree with Starple's research practices, his confession and his reflection on his actions is actually refreshingly honest. The publishing system, the incentive system that's in place right now for academics, doesn't promote good science. Instead, it's a system that incentivizes clean and neat stories, which in the real world, dealing with real human beings, just isn't really realistic.
if they don't come
In
to some radical
0.1
conclusion, they're
miles.
not getting
Keep
published in
left.
that fucking journal. Which is, you know, it's just self-fulfilling
In
prophecy.
0.1 miles. Keep left.
Like we just create these problems ourselves because us humans, you know, we want to be surprised and shit. But the truth is, a lot of studies are just trash. You know what the best thing you could do? Make real life observations. Real life observations based on people's behaviors, not by asking questions, not by reading studies, just by making observations with your five senses through life. And the unfortunate thing is that even this, you're going to have your own bias that you're going to have to deal with. And when you come to certain conclusions, you're going to have to try to fight that bias and make sure you're being objective and not emotional. This is going to be difficult for you guys trying to analyze things with your own relationships, but it's better than these fucking studies. Yeah, so go through life being skeptical of these studies, okay? The book I read that inspired me to make this, it's called Science Fictions by Stuart Ritchie. He's actually a friend of Robert Plowman, somebody we discuss on this channel quite frequently because of his book Blueprint and his incredible findings in genetics. And they're friends, and it makes sense why they're friends, because like Robert Plowman is literally like pointing out how much garbage is in psychology and explaining, like, can we observe genetic truths for a second? Can we look at these actual studies that could be replicated, like the twin studies and the adoption studies, and like, hello, let's look at the data here instead of these retard psychologists, these fucking idiot psychologists. Anyway, yeah, that'll conclude it. I just wanted to get this off my chest. We are the leaders of the Naya land. You don't sniff petrol from a can. You put the petrol in the car, it goes. Don't be Rama Rama, sniff it up your nose.
You say, Daddy, do you understand? You don't sniff petrol from a can. You put the petrol in the car, it goes. Don't be Rama Rama, sniff it up your nose. Use your brains, think about your culture.
Yeah, you know, come to think about it, it makes total sense. You know, like, I am also 87 IQ and putting shit up my nose, so seems to add up there.